All right. So let's think about. We'll talk about the difference between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. So here's a googly picture of a mitochondria. The mitochondria is the organelle of cellular respiration, all right? Which means also that mitochondria is the organelle of aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration occurs in mitochondria. Remember, what does aerobic respiration require? Aerobic respiration requires oxygen. And remember the equation for cellular respiration? Whoops. Remember? Cellular respiration. Glucose plus oxygen. If you have oxygen involved in the situation, it is aerobic respiration. So, and remember, the other kind of respiration is anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration. Okay, so up here we'll have aerobic respiration. I'm going to move down a little bit. Okay, anaerobic. All right, so here's the question. Do you need mitochondria to do anaerobic respiration? The answer to that is no. And what type of organisms don't have mitochondria? Bacteria. Bacteria don't have mitochondria. Bacteria. Okay? So, I mean, yes, that means that they are very simple and they can't produce a lot of energy. Anaerobic respiration, remember, is not very efficient. But this also means that bacteria can pretty much live anywhere and are actually very successful organisms. So, I mean, here you have a picture of somebody not, or maybe whatever, you know, obviously they're in a bathroom and they're getting a bunch of bugs. That's what we call bacteria, but bacteria are not bugs because bugs are animals. Bacteria are not animals. Bacteria are bacteria. But bacteria is an organism that carries out anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration, no oxygen required. Now there are two types of anaerobic respiration. And we refer to these as fermentation. We have alcoholic fermentation, which is, here's the equation for alcoholic fermentation. And we have lactic acid fermentation. So here you go. Okay, so again, we have anaerobic respiration. And there are two types of anaerobic respiration. One is called alcoholic fermentation. Fermentation is just talking about anaerobic respiration. So when you see fermentation, it's talking about anaerobic respiration. So you have lactic acid fermentation and alcoholic fermentation. What's the difference between these two? Well, it has to do with the byproducts that are produced. In alcoholic fermentation, you have ethanol being produced, and ethanol is alcohol, and ethanol is a toxin. So if ethanol becomes too highly concentrated, organisms start to die, which is one of the reasons why alcohol, for example, rubbing alcohol, makes very good sanitizers. I mean, what is hand sanitizer? It's alcohol. So that's where that comes from. It comes from alcoholic fermentation. We get that generally, we get it from yeast. We talked about yeast in the last video. Then we have lactic acid fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation is what you do, I do, bears, whatever, when our cells don't have enough oxygen to produce ATP that is needed. So that's in, strenuous exercise. Our muscles, for example, the cells in our muscles will start doing lactic acid fermentation if they can't get enough oxygen. Um, but then you end up having lactic acid accumulate in your muscle tissue, and lactic acid is a toxin, and that's one of the things that causes muscle cramps, is a buildup of lactic acid. And that's from lactic acid fermentation that happens while our cells are going through anaerobic respiration because they don't have a lot of oxygen available. So there you have it. If hopefully that made sense. If not, shoot me an email and I'll answer any questions that you might have.